And I am Stefania Pulio from the Gentleman's Square, and I'm so excited to be here, as always, every Friday at 12:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time, coming on live to talk to you about relationship issues, all what happens under the relationship umbrella. And today we are talking about, yes, you know it, communication, the backbone of keeping a relationship together. Now, we've heard that all before, I think, where, you know, we say communication's so important and it holds it brings couples closer, it creates more intimacy, it is the foundation of a relationship. But today we're going to be actually talking about, the impacts of when we don't have communication, right? And as the title says, it's how is the lack of communication impacting our relationships? And I think in today's time, with everything that we are influenced by. We have social media, we have the influence of just everything that's happening, and our attention is drawn away. We're easily influenced by being drawn to different, I guess. What's that? The shiny metal syndrome, where we tend to be drawn to something very quickly, and sometimes even that can take away the communication between couples. But communication, what is it, and how does it actually help? Bring couples closer, possibly repairing relationships, making relationships stronger, and how the lack of it and the impact that it has um, on ourselves, as well as the family unit, and the extended family around us. So communication, when we have a lack of communication, it leads to couples feeling disconnected from one another. They feel like they're uh, not able to have an easy flow of relationship. And really, ultimately, that's what we're all after, really, where we can communicate easily and effectively without all the drama. But what I wanted to share today is, why is it so important? Why is having communication in your relationship so important? And then, the lack of it, how it can actually um, strengthen a relationship, or it can actually make a relationship fall apart, basically. And if unresolved conflicts, for example, when we are not communicating with our other half, the experience it has on us, the ongoing effects that it has, and it usually doesn't get easier when we are not working on our communication skills with one another. Okay. Because what happens is it becomes, it sort of like has a domino effect. If we're not communicating effectively, and we're not resolving our conflicts through communication, because let's face it, there's always conflicts in a relationship, it will then have a domino effect and affect other areas of our lives. For example, it'll affect our finances, it'll affect our sexual intimacy, it'll affect the children in the family. If you have children, it'll affect our work, because then we are then taking this, these issues, energetically, we're then vibrating it into other areas of our lives. So the impacts that it has is really tremendous. And I think a lot of the times we underestimate, because we're so engrossed with um, rushing from one place to the other, and sometimes we think we're communicating, but we're not. Because sometimes we just unrealistically think, "Oh, our partner should just automatically know. He or she just knows how we think, so, they get it. They should understand. They should know that this is how I do things." And that's when we have this, breakdown of communication. And so why is it so important? Because, communication creates a really healthy space for couples or for, partners, that are either starting a relationship or been in a relationship for, a lot of years. It's a place where, um, it's holding that space where you can be open, you can be vulnerable, you can, you know, come together and share what is important to you, where you're able to also set healthy boundaries, respect one another. And of course, if there are, issues where we may not like or we may not agree with what's been said, it gives us an opportunity to, um, be listened to and be able to speak and have a voice in that relationship. So yeah, communication, it's a big one. I know it's really broad, but the reason I brought this up is because I am conducting a survey which, has been really, really effective. And one of the main issues in like I mentioned, communication, um, intimacy, um, falling apart, not having the same goals, different areas of where relationships are kind of breaking down. And communication was actually one of the bigger ones, believe it or not. So I thought, this would be a great opportunity to be able to speak about it and, share the impacts that, a lack of communication has. Now, I just want to quickly share a story. What happened with me in just this week, actually, with a lack of communication, where I was, communicating with someone, and this was via text, and we were getting into a fairly, interesting, deep conversation, which, um, I thought was okay. I think we shouldn't be talking about this via texting, because texting, I don't know what experience you've had with texting, but I have in the past. It can be, misinterpreted. As you know, we all have an internal representation of how we take in information. And usually it can be either deleted, distorted, or generalized. And when that happens, what happens, our internal representation of what we're taking in may be totally different to what that other person is actually talking about or trying to express themselves. So, this is where there was a miscommunication. And fortunately enough, I was able to see it coming. And I kind of like stopped and I said, "You know what? I think this conversation, um, uh, needs to be um, needs to be happening when we're talking to each other, whether it's over the phone or whether it's when we're looking at each other." And it was really interesting how I was able to, see what was happening, and I took control. And I guess I set a boundary. It's a form of boundary or a request saying, let's talk about this. I don't want to talk about this right now. Let's get together and or get on the phone, and speak about it. And it was really interesting how, it changed the whole energy of the conversation. And the other person actually responded really well, because sometimes I get a little bit, "Oh, is am I, trying to be too controlling here or something?" Which is not my intention, obviously, but, it was taken really well. And I said, "I just feel that this conversation is going too deep, and, I think it's there's a bit of a misunderstanding of what I'm trying to communicate." So there was this like perfect example of a lack of communication or a lack of, also, um, taking control of how this is communicated, whether it's communicated via text, whether it's communicated verbally over a telephone conversation, or sometimes you may need to be in that space with that person to be communicating whatever it is that you're communicating. But when we are communicating, we can feel, or when there's poor communication, and we're not communicating this, there's there's all these emotions that come through. We can feel emotionally unsafe. We can feel um, disconnected. We can feel like we're not important, or there may be a level of frustration, like what was happening in my communication with my friend. um, and sometimes, when there's this poor communication, we can also feel alone because we don't feel understood. We feel misunderstood. We feel like, no one's getting us. So, this is not good for the longevity of a relationship, whether it's short term or long term. A lack of communication is definitely going to have an impact on our relationships. It's definitely going to have, an impact where, if it's unresolved issues, it's going to fester and possibly blow up out of control. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, because of this communication breakdown or a lack of communication, we see a lot of separations in relationships, divorces, breakups that are happening very, very consistently, I would say. And when there is this poor communication, this is what happens, right? You're not able to have the opportunity to repair, okay, past wounds. Because a lot of the time, if we're having um, poor communication or lack of communication, it may be because we have grown up in an environment where communication wasn't, something that was reinforced, something that was in drummed into us to talk. We may have modeled what our parents' relationship may have been like. So when we're in that, I guess, that environment, it makes it really hard. So it makes it hard to repair the wounds, you know, and let alone, I guess, trying and make your relationship work at the same time. So, yeah, lack of communication can definitely have um, a negative impact, and it can also leave us stuck. It can have us, stuck in patterns, behavioral patterns that we're used to, that we know how to, address situations, how we can deal with conflict. And sometimes, for some people, communication may be just stonewalling, where we shut down and, just unable to. Uh, who do we have here? Hi, Maria, is it? I think so. Yes. How are you? Love your insights and amazing. Oh, thank you so much, Maria. Great to see you. Great to have you join me. But yeah, communication is definitely a number one contributing foundational, how can I put it, a pillar that we need in our, relationships, because without it, we definitely don't have much to work on. And, this is a time too that we can lay the cards on the table. And um, it's really interesting. There's this show that's plays here. It's called Married at First Sight. For those Australians that watch it, I know that it's on Sunday, Monday, and I think Tuesday evening, which everybody stops for Married at First Sight. I think other countries do have the same show in their countries, but it's really interesting when I watch this show, the repeated pattern the repeated, I guess, issue, and I won't call it a problem, okay? I'm going to call it a program because we don't have problems. We have programs. So the repeated programming that is in a lot of, these people on the show is their communication, the level of communication, the way they are either expansive in their communication or they're not, and they retreat and feel that they are better off not talking. And usually, what this was another observation that I found on the show was that men seem to do more of the withdrawing, like withdrawing and not communicating. And interestingly enough, in my survey, one of my questions was, how do you deal with conflict? Do you face the problem? Do you withdraw and, avoid conflict? Do you talk about it when, you know, both of you have calmed down? And interestingly enough, men answered on average, I think it was something like 80%, that they prefer to withdraw from a conversation and conflict. They don't like conflict. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. Put a comment in the box below to say, yeah, it's a lot easier just to withdraw. It's just a lot easier not to say anything. And I know sometimes, we tend to do the whole silent treatment because we feel that we can either protect ourselves or we can have better control over the conversation. Because if you're not responding and you're giving the silent treatment, you feel like you're in control. And usually what happens in those situations, when one is silent, the other one might be at you wanting to get a response, wanting to get some kind of information or something, whether it be uh, a positive response or a negative response. We're always looking for a response generally. So yes, the impact of the lack of communication is definitely um, can be quite negative. And I really wanted to address this because I think what is important is we must focus on having that communication, feeling comfortable in our own skins to be able to be asking the questions we want to ask. And I often say to couples or people when they say that they really struggle to communicate, let's not get too serious. Let's not get too into our heads of how am I going to say it? How is she going to take it? Or how am I going to deal with if she, hits the roof and flips on me? Let's add a bit of, curiosity, a playfulness in our level of communication, because that way we are not getting so serious. We're not getting too much into our heads. And, there's that level of curiosity, which also can be quite attractive. Curiosity in a fun, light way, not in being like an interrogator of, and making that person feel like they're being interrogated, I guess. So yes, communication, there's good communication and there's, poor communication. So I might do a video on, the different types of communication, whether it be good and, whether it be, positive communication or negative communication, good ways, bad ways, I guess, of communicating. But I'll leave that for another video. But I just want to wrap it up and just say, have a think about the type of communication you have with your partner. Think about what type of communication you'd like to have. If it is a where there is a little bit of communication breakdown, there is a lack of communication, you'd like to be able to communicate better or get better responses from your partner. There is ways of doing it. And, the main takeaways that I would say is keep it light, keep it jovial, keep it playful, keep it curious, keep those questions, the level of intimacy, in a light, curious, fun, jovial way. Also, allow that your partner and to make, allow them to feel comfortable, and let them know that you're providing them a space where they can feel vulnerable, where they can feel safe, um, and that you're, providing the time to listen, not interrupt, but just really listen, and possibly ask key questions that will have them answer in an open-end question, like have an open-end answer rather than a closed-end response. And that means don't ask questions where they can answer yes or no, right? Try and articulate your questions in a way that they're going to answer you in more than 2 or 3 words, so you got something to elaborate on. And of course, keep reiterating to yourself that it's okay to express my feelings and, have a voice and allow yourself to communicate, because a lot of the times we suppress our feelings and we are too afraid, or we future pace into our minds of what the worst possible scenario can be if I bring this topic up, if I start talking about this subject. All right, so don't go too far ahead in your thinking. Stay in your heart, and not in your head. Because when we're in our head, we're definitely over analyzing, and we get analytical, because that's where the conscious mind is, and we will you know break things down, dissect them, have doubt, have all these uh, usually, we're infiltrated with negative thought patterns that we miss out on having fun in our communications. So, yes, who do we have here? Pierre. Hi, Pierre. How are you? He says, yes, you're absolutely right. Thank you, Pierre. Good to see you. Thanks for joining in. And I know you talk a lot about, communication with your poetry. You have some great way of communicating. I love your style as well. You can be in your head for weeks. Absolutely. Yeah. And, that's why I always say, take a rain check. Ask yourself, have that conversation with yourself with, what am I feeling here? Or where did that thought pattern come from? And is it mine? Because sometimes they may not be our own uh, thoughts or emotions that we're feeling. And sometimes it may be something we have picked up from someone that has suggested something, or has criticized us, judged us, or even as far back as in our past relationships, something that our ex could have repeatedly said that triggers off that negative thought pattern, and we spiral down it, and create those blocks in our head, and not be able to speak, not be able to communicate, not be able to express ourselves. All right. So I think we have come to our time of wrapping this up. I would like to thank you all for coming on and joining in. And of course, if you're watching live, please hashtag live. If you're watching it on a replay, hashtag replay. I'm always open to your suggestions and ideas of what you would like me to talk about. And I do have a survey that I would love for you to to participate in. So ideally, this survey is for men. So ladies, you're welcome to take it as well. Because it can be used for both, but it is directed to men. I will put it in the in the feed below, feel free to take the survey and yeah, help me because the idea is I'm you know, wanting to put a new program together, specifically in areas that I feel that you, as the audience, need or would like to hear more content of. And yeah, so to be, it's for my own research and to better and improve my programs as well. All right, so as always, I want to send you lots of love and lots of passion, and I will catch you very, very soon. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. Yes, do that before you go. Subscribe, press like, share it with your friends, and if you feel this content is valuable and could help someone. And of course, I will see you at the same time, same place next week with Let's Talk Relationship. Until then, as always, I send you love and I send you passion. Bye for now.